Hello. Welcome to Building Renaissance Leaders podcast. My name is Vic Vogel. Well, for you who have seen some of my podcasts, you realize I'm not a podcaster, really. I'm a leadership expert, and I spent a lot of years as a leader in developing leaders. And so I'm trying to put content out on YouTube and other places that is helpful to leaders today who are struggling in today's leadership world, which I think needs a lot of help. And so, building the Renaissance Leader uh, program is about creating podcasts that will leave digital libraries for people to be able to go back to on their smartphone. If they run into a problem, they happen to remember they saw something and I did, they can get on their smartphone, go in there and take a look at it, refresh your memory before they have to go interact on a difficult employee discussion or something like that. So it's an opportunity to share information I run across I think are helpful for leaders. It's also an opportunity for people who are leaders or thought generators in those areas to jump on a podcast with me periodically and talk about their area of specialty, whether that's positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, or some of those things. And out of these podcasts, I usually leave a lot of links and resources people can go back to. But I am not a professional podcaster, so I'm excited about giving you content, not so much how I get the content to you. I know that probably blows the mind of every podcaster out there who's trying to earn revenue on YouTube. But anyway, tonight is an interesting podcast, I think, because I was reading through some information this morning. I have certain places I go to find information. Today in Psychology Today, I ran across an article that said the four predictors of divorce. And there's a husband wife couple that have been researching this heavily, and so this article is premised a little on their research and their articles. And I thought it was really interesting because obviously I have some experience in divorce, unfortunately. Um, and it rang clear to me. And I wondered, wow, wouldn't it have been nice if I would have had some therapy with my wife before we went into marriage? I mean, not just a, a visit like you do with a preacher before you get married, but I mean, some good, solid 6 month therapy as a couple that talked about what's going to happen if this happens, what's going to happen if that happens. And because in my Renaissance Leadership Odyssey book, and I'll leave you a link to where you can get some of this information in the description. But in that book, one of my premises is we need to start hiring leaders in house instead of outsourcing the selection. The senior leadership needs to grasp a hold again of developing leaders, developing them within the organization, taking the time to do it and identify it, so you're not spending thousands and thousands of dollars trying to find leaders through search groups, and you don't know if they're going to adapt to your culture or not. There's really a lot of benefit from focusing your leadership, hiring or identification, selection, development inside. And one of the things is you could spend the 6 months or a year or so to actually spend time converting what I call a leadership psychological profile, where you spend time working as an individual to understand who you are and what it is about leadership, that you may be attracted to, or maybe you find out you're not attracted to it after the therapy, which is good because then we're not wasting money on putting somebody in a position. They fail in that position, plus we have to replace that position. That's a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money, and just providing leaders. Where if we understand through this therapy session, whether that's 6 months or a year of working with a performance psychologist or a clinical psychologist, understand who you are, what's involved in leadership, how you play a role in that, how you think, how you can train yourself to think differently and adjust to leadership. All of that kind of information would be at your fingertips. And I was thinking, wow, if we did this, if it was sort of mandatory, it's probably never going to be mandatory, but if it was mandatory, you had to spend 6 months in couples therapy discussing some of the stuff we're going to be talking here in this podcast. You may end up benefiting in a relationship a lot from that kind of conversation, that kind of development. So that's what intrigued me, because I recommend this for leadership. And I was thinking, wow, if I would have done that, I may have probably not had near the problems I had in my marriage. Uh, so let me go on over here to, there we go, our little slideshow here. If you're listening to this audio, I have this over in YouTube on video. It's actually a set of slides where you can see these while we're discussing them. So, but sometimes people listen to my audio podcast on Apple and then they come over to YouTube. Wherever you are, I am interested in, one, you subscribing to both Apple's podcast and the YouTube podcast I do. And the YouTube podcast, I have a community where you can go over and start conversations or ask questions or things like that. I check it periodically to see. I'm not promoting it so much, but it's there if you want. But particularly, I'm interested in you providing not only subscribing and liking the channel, because that helps me get out to more people, but also notifications. So when I do something quick like this, it might pop up on your screen. You go, oh yeah, I think I'll go over there and watch it. I try to plan them in advance, but when I find something like this and I'm in a position to do it, I just do it. Because, like I said, I'm really not trying to get a lot of followers on YouTube while I'm live. I'm just trying to create a podcast for a digital library that you can go back to and listen to it later. So now, if you're live, I really like it because sometimes you'll come on, you'll create a question, or you let me know you're here, and I know I have an audience, so I can adjust the podcast to that. Enough about all of that. Let's talk about the things, the four things that can predict divorce. And what I entitle this is the two most critical relationship, your partner and your leader. What can cause a breakup of both? And I'm interested to see if you think the things that are impacting a partner relationship, whether you're married or however that relationship exists, where you're partnered with somebody and there's an intimate relationship there. If these things could be maybe a significant reason why employees are quitting leaders in corporations and going to try to find different corporations with different types of leaders. So anyway, so I thought this was interesting. So we'll play with this. We'll get on here and see if we can work through some of these slides here and talk about it. So what are these four things that accurately predict divorce? That's the title of the Psychology Today article. Again, that'll be in the description of this YouTube video and the Apple podcast when it comes out. So you can go look us up and read it and make your own conclusions. But I'm pretty much drawing everything directly from that article, so I'm not trying to regenerate anything here or repurpose it in any way. This is pretty much what the article says. I just am putting the bent on it from two perspectives. Could this be impacting leadership too? And secondly, the role that interpersonal communication plays in all of this stuff happening. And we really don't have anything where we spend a significant amount of time educating people in interpersonal communication. So tonight, you get a little education on some interpersonal communication tips. I'm going to leave you at the end of this podcast to tell you a little bit about some of the things you can do to how you can use interpersonal communication to recognize maybe this is going on and maybe how to get out of it if you got into it. So let's look at what the four strongest predictors of divorce are. Before we get started, what we're going to talk about is the similarities between spouses and leadership relationships and maybe the enhanced difference of leaders over employees because of the power base and what I call legitimate power base they have over employees. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through. These are as we go through the process. This is kind of what I'm going to be doing. We're going to look at the impact that interpersonal communications has on the four strongest predictors of divorce, because frankly, this is all about communication. If you didn't communicate, you wouldn't have these four strongest predictors. You wouldn't have these problems. Okay, but you also wouldn't have any relationship. So it's kind of part of being in a relationship is talking. At least you're supposed to. How the four strongest predictors relate to leaders and employees who choose to quit and seek their other jobs. So we're going to kind of look at it from those three angles as we wander our way through these predictors. So what is the first predictor? It's criticism. And you say, criticism? Well, I know that's not a big deal, but it's how you look at criticism that's important. So they say the first four horsemen, and they refer to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So this is devastating stuff. Is they say the first horseman is criticism. And it's unlike the simple complaint or maybe a critique of something you've done wrong about a specific mistake, or it's criticism's a direct attack on your partner. Character. Often it's comprised of sweeping generalizations. So this isn't just oh I asked you to bring some bread home after work. You didn't bring bread home after work. What the hell's wrong with you? Are you stupid or something? I mean, even any kid could get this done. Look, how's that? This is no problem. I told you to bring it. I really needed it for this dish I'm making tonight for you. I really told you to bring it home. Why can't you ever get done what I ask you to do? Are you mentally ill or something? It is a direct attack. It's not, oh, you forgot the bread. Do you mind going back out and getting it for me? I really need it. So, you might have a complaint. They forgot the bread. The critique might be, you might, I wonder do you need me to make some notes for you or maybe put something on your phone to help you remember instead of just telling you on the phone? That's a critique. That's an edifying critique with a suggestion, a helpful suggestion to help the person. The other, what I did before, was an exact attack on the person's character, who they are. And you can kind of imagine how that would make you feel if you got unloaded like that right off the bat just because you forgot the loaf of bread. So that's the difference between a complaint, a critique, and a criticism of somebody. So now take that and think about that in a work environment. I come barreling out. I'm going through the budget. I come barreling out to Mary Jane's desk, and I say, "Look, there's $1,000 mistake on this budget, and you put the period in the wrong place, and it's right here. What the hell's the matter with you? Any kid could do this today on a computer. Are you crazy or something? You really need to get your act together," and then stomp back into my office. And I do that in front of all our people. I just leveled criticism on this lady. You can imagine what if she's not crying by then or going to the bathroom to cry, just how much emotion she is holding inside from that criticism. Where I could have gone out and said, "Mary, there's a mistake here. It's almost $1,000. Did you notice it?" "No." "Well, here it is. What do you think went wrong, and how can we get this corrected real quick?" That's a big difference. You know, is there anything I can do to help you get it corrected? Anything you don't know that I need to show you? That's, it's not a criticism. It's a critique of something wrong. It's feedback. It's done in a way that's edifying and helpful and hopefully encouraging to that employee. So whether it's you didn't bring a loaf of bread home or whether you just made a minor mistake, criticism leveled at somebody is a destroying method for trying to get somebody to see something. It just tears people down. And I mean, really tears them down to the point where they may not get back up to where you need them to be. And if you're consistent with criticism, my gosh, talk about a toxic culture, whether it's a partnership or whether it's at work. The two areas where you spend the vast majority of your time and have somebody that you have a relationship with that means something to you, whether it's helping you, whether it's someone who loves you, cares for you, and you can share with, or whether it's somebody who is providing you employment, trying to help you grow, trying to help you develop. Both of those are the relationships you a lot of times you spend most of your time with in a day if you have an effective leader at work. If you have one that shuts the door and doesn't talk to you, you don't have a relationship. So, but criticism is one of those things that happens. And the behavior is so damaging because what it does is shifts from the issue at hand and it really starts looking at the flaws of the person that you're talking to, whether that's your partner or an employee. It doesn't make any difference. It takes it off the issue, which in an employee's situation, it was an error on their budget, and the personal partner situation, it was bringing a loaf of bread at home. So that's the dilemma that happens. So criticism really doesn't serve to express dissatisfaction or critique someone, but rather it assigns blame. It assigns blame to somebody, and that's what you're doing when you're criticizing somebody. So this is the first horseman. This is the first of the four things that you can, if you see this going on, you can pretty accurately predict something might be going wrong with this partnership, this marriage, or something might be not just right at work. So I could see that happening in both places. And so criticism, if you see criticism floating around a lot, uh, something to be aware of and try to figure out how to either change it or get out of it from that perspective. So uh, the next uh, thing that is a predictor of divorce, fairly accurate. And they actually, this couple that's doing the studies, said this is about 94% accurate. That's scary. Okay, defensiveness is when you're defensive, and the first form of defensiveness is what's called the innocent victim stance, in which once you're accused of something or somebody brings something, I mean, they may bring it to you in the form of a critique. They may say, hey, look, this is a complaint. But as soon as you hear that, your first reaction as that person is to be an innocent victim stance, in which you start whining, you start fishing around for excuses, for the mistakes you made. It seems as though you were wrongfully accused, like in the partnership situation, it might be something along the lines, look, you knew I was busy all day long. I just, if I told you that before I went to work, so if you didn't hear that, if you didn't think I was going to bring it home, you probably should have done that yourself. You should have gone and gotten it yourself. So the issue is still, I didn't bring the bread home, but now I'm beginning to project that on you a little bit, maybe a little stronger, maybe in the employee situation a little better explain when I start saying, hey, this is the error, and this is what happened, and the employer might push back and say, well, you didn't tell me what you wanted out of this. You didn't show me how to do it. You haven't even given me any training since I've been here. that's a that's an innocent victim. It's not my fault. It's your fault. I'm projecting this back on you. If you would have trained me, this probably wouldn't have happened. So that's sort of the innocent victim stances, where you're sort of, I'm not, this isn't really my fault, and you start making up a lot. The machine doesn't work well, or I got called at the last minute of work and I forgot about the bread. There's a lot of excuses people offer up for why they make a mistake, assuming off the bat that when they get home and the bread's not there, you're going to get smacked between the eyes. It depends on how you get smacked between the eyes, determines whether that divorce is imminent or not, I guess. So, so you use an excuse to lift the blame away from your actions and onto your partner's perceived unfairness, so to speak, or the environment, or whatever else you can use to excuse the fact you just didn't do what you were supposed to do. The second part of the second way that defensiveness is used is called the righteousness indignation stance, in which we fight criticism with criticism in an attempt to counterattack it. For example, if your partner complains about something you promised to do but you forgot, like the bread, you counter it with, I had such a long day. You knew today would be busy for me. So why didn't you just do it yourself? Why did you put this damn problem on me? I'm tired of that. I'm tired of having to do your stuff, and then you blame me for it not getting done when you know I'm busy. I can't handle this stuff. You had arguments like that before? Yeah, I have. That's why it struck me right between the eyes. I'm going, oh my God. I was actually righteous indignation. Indignation. Yeah, I really, I was putting it back on you. I was slamming you with the criticism that you were hitting me with. And you could just feel the tension there. You can almost feel the increase in tension. This gets to be a hotter argument as both people are now wrapped up in criticism. So you ignore the issue at hand and entirely ignore it, and instead you deflect with a criticism of your partner's actions or inactions, and the criticism is about them, not the action. You're actually criticizing their incompetence, their mental capacity, whatever that might be. So those are the two ways. Defensiveness is the second of the four horsemen that can predict divorce. So if you're seeing criticism, if you're seeing defensiveness in your discussions as the partners or leader and employee relationship, you're beginning to see something that could break this relationship up. So let's go to I'm sorry. And it says here, in a healthy relationship, partners shouldn't find much difficulty. And this is true. If you have a healthy relationship or you know how to communicate in these discussions, you shouldn't have a lot of difficulty taking responsibility for the fact that you forgot the bread. Man, I got busy and I just forgot the bread. I'm so sorry. I'll go get it for you right now. And that you should be able to do that without a fear factor. Now, here's where I was saying there's sort of an unbalanced situation here between partners who live together who may see themselves as equals, or one is slightly more of a leader of the relationship than the other. But in an organization, in a company, you are structured and designed with that. You are assigned a title, a legitimate title that says you have control over this employee. You can affect their livelihood, their income, their health care insurance. You can affect a lot of things, how many hours they work, the bonuses they get, where they work. You can affect all of that as a legitimate leader assigned a title with the authority to do those things to that person. That person very seldom has the same recourse about the leader. Now, if they gather a union, that's a different story. They begin to build some power, but it never gets to the point where the power between an employee and a leader is balanced. It's one of the things you need to understand when you're a leader and you're going into a new organization with a title and authority, okay, and you're an employee and you have new leaders coming in and you stay there. And we see that a lot in corporations. Employees stay the course. They stay there. They're working consistently. Leaders tend to get promoted. They have more ways of leaving. And so consequently, building that relationship is more difficult. It's one of the things I say in Renaissance Leadership Odyssey. My book is you need to take the communication and the emotional intelligence. Well, you need to take it all, but those two particular areas specifically, you need to take that training all the way down into your employee workforce, because employees have to talk with and communicate with and adapt to leadership on a change more frequently than leaders are changing employee relationships. Employee leaders can get fired, they can get promoted, they can get reassigned. There's a lot of things that happen to leaders where that employee is still there and they have to cope with a new person. So understanding how to deal with these things effectively would make a big difference when a leader first comes into an organization with new employees, how to build that rapport, how to sustain and provide input and feedback to employees so that they really get excited about having you there. So, and they could make a mistake and they could tell you about that mistake. I think Warren Buffett says in Berkshire Hathaway. One of the rules is you've got to know, you have to come tell me the serious mistakes soon, quickly. Don't hold off on them. Now, he didn't say he's not going to critique you on them, but he's probably not going to criticize you on them, or you wouldn't be bringing them up there. That wouldn't be encouraging you to bring them up there. So there's what I would call a Renaissance leader. He's already established a culture that says, I want you to bring me the bad news very quickly so we can cope with it and I can help you with it. I don't want you to wait till it's too late because you're afraid to bring it in. Same should be true in a partnership, in a marriage. You shouldn't be afraid to tell your partner something that went wrong, that you did wrong, that you know they're not going to like. You shouldn't have an environment where the reaction's going to be you're going to get criticized and you're going to get lambasted, and it should be one where you're not fearful of doing that. You can come in and say, hey, by the way, I'm sorry, I just got home. I forgot to bring the bread. Do you need it? If you do, I'll go ahead and get it. So and to handle it that way, and some of those situations. And yeah, circumstances and all that will create sometimes uh, sharp criticism when it isn't really meant. And that's the dilemma. Once you say it, it's extremely hard for the other person to forget it, that you're not going to be that way again. So there you go on the criticism and the defensiveness, where the person being criticized tries to turn it back around on the individual who's doing the criticizing, or it's just not my fault. There's too many other things that went wrong. So those are two things that when you start seeing them happening in a marriage, you should start questioning yourself. We need to sit down and talk about this. We need to go get help talking about this. Might be a good way to do it. Like I said, that if you could talk about criticism and defensiveness for 6 months in therapy before you got married, circumstances, what could come up, what are the situations, and how do you feel about it? You went through all of this therapy about just these two areas, how much easier that would make your life. The third area, by far, is the worst. It's contempt. The third horseman, and certainly the most vicious one, is contempt, which involves making indignant statements, horrible statements, from a perceived position of authority over your partner. This is an unbalanced partner relationship where one of those partners is strongly controlling the other person, even maybe to the point of what we would call mental abuse, or even physical abuse for that matter. The contempt means I hold you in contempt. I don't like anything about you, really. There's nothing I can do. I'm having to cope with you, but I don't like anything about you. And so consequently, I'm going to do all of the things I can do to demean you and put you in a position where you're subservient to me, so I can control this situation. So that's kind of, you can see where something like this would start out with smaller things and escalate into something maybe even dangerous in some cases for people, but certainly to the point where the person goes, I've had enough. And that person might not even, if you have contempt for someone, they may never ever tell you they're leaving you. They may just disappear. And that's the hardest feeling for somebody to deal with. You go home and they're just not there. They're just not there. And and all of a sudden you're there and you're dealing with this, and that normally is probably derived from the feeling of contempt you've put upon them. You've made them feel this contempt that you have for them, and it makes them fearful of even having to deal with telling you about it. I'm just leaving, I'm getting out of here, and that's it. So you will see that in some cases, uh, in a situation like that. It is the meanest, most condescending of all the critiques of all the dilemmas that are associated with divorce, contempt is probably the worst. The Gottmans, who are the husband and wife people that did the study, the experts, they're experts in partner relationships, declare to be the greatest predictor of divorce. If you have this, you can almost guarantee you're going to end up in divorce if you have this in a relationship. Contempt's generally the outcome of a very deep-seated resentment and anger that could be born out of a lot of other issues. So even if you are sensing this in the beginning, this is one of those areas you don't want to try to rectify on your own or with a magazine article or something out of Women's Day or whatever, or Men's Health or whatever. You want to take this to a professional. Get this handled immediately by a professional, and hopefully you might salvage that relationship if you can get in and deal with it. Because there are some things you can do that will behave differently. I never had any of this. I sure wished I had. As I look back of all the misery that's come out of the divorce I had, I just I just wonder what it would have been like to have the therapy. I don't even know at that time whether I was open to it or not, but somebody who could have pushed me into it probably would have done me a really good service. So here's some manifestations of contempt. This is kind of how you can, these are manifestations are like behavior. So when you're talking to people, you don't want to profile them from race or religion or things that you really can't accurately and effectively do something with. Behaviors you can. So if you get in the habit of being able to recognize behaviors, you don't have to do it on yourselves when you're in trouble, particularly, but you can literally go out and watch people have an interaction. Watch couples who get into arguments and see what happens and how they handle them. You can watch other people who have great relationships and what they're doing. You can see a behavior is physically observable. It is observable. You can see it. You can classify it. You can take it and understand it. You see it happening. So if you get in the habit of being able to recognize these things when they pop up, you can probably short circuit them or circumvent them and do something to help yourself overcome these problems. Communication is one of those things that you can actually do some great behavioral assessment from just observing people. Okay, because you can see, I mean, you can hear what they say and you can see how they behave when they say it. So it's extremely powerful in that way once you get that skill of being able to observe communication. So this is something you have to learn and play with and understand. When I do my workshop, I have a 12-week workshop, and I make sure I do it one day a week for 12 weeks so that when we have the class and we talk about the theory of something like what is manifestations of contempt, when we talk about them, then we actually spend almost an hour and a half of the class just talking about how that happens, where you've experienced it, where you've experienced in your life, how you could see it, and how you might go out and practice looking at it just the way you would practice a basketball shot to get good at basketball. You have to practice this stuff. You can't just lay around and assume because you can talk and hear since you were 2 years old, you can communicate. That's the problem with the world today. We are thinking we can communicate, But everything that's going on, whether it's the wars in the Mideast and Ukraine, those are really between two people. The fighters are all getting killed, but it's really between two leaders in Gaza and Israel. They could both sit down and say, we're going to end this right now, and it's all over. But you're seeing in their communication what their behaviors, what their thought processes are, and then you know what you need to do to try to convert that. And where you have somebody who's gone too far, excuse me, too far over the edge, they may be narcissistic in their behavior. You might not be able to get them back. So you have to take more, severe consequences. You need to create more severe consequences before they'll move their behavior. The manifestations of contempt are sarcasm, using biting remarks to belittle your partner. You can see that happening with leaders and employees. You see it between employees and employees. Okay. But you could see it in a leader who doesn't care for an employee. Insults, making a slanderous attack on your partner's character or intelligence. And I gave you that example about how I dealt with the real miserable example, the criticism example of the employee where I really got in her face and blew up on her. And all the things I said to her that probably were painful. This is what we mean by insults, attacking somebody, not about the issue, just attacking them personal, making them personally inadequate in their mind as you're talking to them. Name calling, using derogatory, demeaning names to address your partner. You could associate him with somebody who is horrible or something that's horrible. It's usually an association kind of thing that anybody could recognize. Sometimes they use nationalities or they use race, or they use other things. Those are the things that are so harmful and hurtful, because they're derogatory and they're demeaning of the individual. They're intentionally meant to demean you. Disrespectful body language. This is where nonverbal communication comes in. And people don't really understand the significance of nonverbal communication. They always tend to think of it as eye contact or something you do in your facial feature. Maybe you have your arms crossed. But there's so much more to nonverbal communication that people really don't know about that is impactful on without saying a word. Without saying a word. So when you're rolling your eyes, or you're scoffing or sneering, or you throw somebody a gesture that signals disdain, you can kind of imagine what that gesture is with your hand. You're really disrespectful. You're telling this person, I don't care about you. I don't care about you. So those are things. Contempt conveys that you are superior and think less of your partner, leaving them feeling worthless and inferior. There's probably nothing more you can do to another human being than make them feel worthless and inferior. Nothing. In some cases, it drives them to suicide because they can't handle that inferior complex. And they don't have anywhere to turn to get it out. So these things can escalate to some pretty serious stuff. And you need to understand that's both as a partner in a relationship like a marriage, or as a boss-subordinate relationship. You can do exactly the same things. I'm thinking that's probably, these four things, I could go into an organization and tell you right off the bat whether there's a problem with turnover in that organization. Just listening and observing the behaviors of leaders. But there's a lot of things that we can cover, and we'll talk a little more about nonverbal behavior to enlighten you about some of the powerful things you have that can enhance your communication. but you can also begin to recognize when it's not effective, when it's really harming your communication. Stonewalling is the last of the four horsemen, which involves complete and utter disengagement from an interaction with your partner. Okay, stop. I've had enough. I'm out of here. And you pile out the door, you get in the car, and you go drive somewhere for an hour until you cool off. I've just had it. I'm not gonna, that just says to the other person, I've had enough. I can't take it anymore. I don't think you're right. I don't think you're treating me right. I've had it. I'm done with you. I'm out of here. At the far extreme, they leave and they never come back. Okay. At the milder level, you might see it in small nuanced situations where you start a discussion and the person recognizes that you're going to end up in an argument over it and they just leave. They go, I got something else to do. If you're sensing this kind of stuff, you don't want to let it get to the stonewalling where a person just stops talking to you in general and they just leave and they go somewhere else. You don't want to do that. In this state, you're completely shut down because you become so angry, you're so hurt, you're so overwhelmed that you stop listening entirely and you make it very clear to your spouse, to your leader, to whoever, I've had it. That's it. There is no more to be had here. So that's stonewalling. So we've got criticism, we've got defensiveness, we've got contempt, and we've got stonewalling. Imagine if you had all four of those. In fact, that you can see how they could kind of escalate into these things. I start with the criticism, and then that creates defensiveness, and then we're in arguments all the time. And then we start developing contempt for each other, and eventually we just stop talking and we leave. It's a pattern. It's almost a pattern. So you can see that happening. So some manifestations of stonewalling is cease listening to cues such as head nods, eye contact, facial movements. So nonverbal cues, you just don't even pay attention to them anymore. You turn away from the conversation or seek distance between yourself and the other person. Distance is a nonverbal signal. If somebody is distancing themselves from you, it means they want no further contact with you. Tune out entirely, total silence, break off eye contact. I think about this when an employee is sitting with a leader and they realize the leader has control and they have to have the money. They can't quit their job. As much as it's painful, they can't quit their job. The person is just criticizing them. They've laid into them. They're almost to the point of having contempt for the person. They're yelling and screaming at them. That employee is silent, sitting there. Their eyes are fixed dead on the second button on their shirt, and they're trying to tune out everything that's said and not see anything that person's saying or doing. That is stonewalling. That is stonewalling. Sometimes it can take the form of acting busy or doing something while they're talking to you and following you around, and you keep trying to walk away from them. They keep following you. You keep figuring out things to do so that you don't have to pay any attention to them. So actively ignore the other person. Walk into another room while your partner's still talking to you. These are all signs of stonewalling you need to be aware of. So, interpersonal communication tips to help you reduce criticism, defensiveness, contempt, reaching the point of contempt, I hope, stonewalling. If you learn these in the criticism and the basic argument phases, maybe you can prevent from going into contempt. If you get into contempt, that's like I said, that's not something you want to try to resolve with a communication issue. You need to go see a therapist and get some professional advice. Uh, Here's one thing: whether you're angry person, whether you are the angry person about to initiate a discussion, or you are anticipating someone who is going to be angry based on your actions, you want to take time to plan your communication to include emotional intelligence. Plan this discussion. Do not just leap into it and pray it'll work out all right. You will be going to contempt, you will be going to stonewalling, you will be going to divorce court, or you will be hiring a new employee. Take a moment on your way. I mean, even if you have to stop early before you get home somewhere, take a moment and center yourself to become calm. Use some breathing techniques. Sit there, close your eyes, try to clear your mind about everything. Try to concentrate on how you're breathing. Feel how each part of your body feels. These techniques, from a neuroscience perspective, we finally know these techniques are exceptionally good at helping you change your thought process before you go into a discussion, before you get up and speak to somebody, before you do other things. It helps you take your mind out of that very judging, fearful, judging, defensive mode that you tend to be thinking, and open your mind up to something that might be more helpful, more useful, a way of solving the problem or warding off any kind of difficult discussions. And open yourself to empathy. Take a minute and ask yourself, I, I know you don't want to do this, and I didn't want to do it either, but it helped a couple of times when I said, because of what I've done, and when I'm about to come in and talk to this person about how do they feel? How would I feel if I were in their shoes? How would I, how am I, what am I thinking? What are my emotions? Am I fearful? Am I angry? Am I both? Am I concerned? Do I have some sense of self-doubt? All of that stuff, if you can think, if this person is thinking that when I walk in the door, they start to yell at me, I might be able to diffuse all of that by addressing it to start with, by initiating, say, look, I forgot the bread, and I know how that is, and I know how important that was to you. Did I bring that in? I forgot it, and I'm sorry. I can't undo that error right now. I can change it. I can correct it. I just can't undo what I did. And I just want you to know, I know how much that means to you. You must be thinking, he doesn't care enough about me to even bring home a loaf of bread. I want you to know that's not the case. You can do these things if you take the time to plan your discussion. You understand and you've learned how to communicate, what communication is, how it works, how it happens, what's going on when you're talking with somebody. Most people don't know these issues. You have to excuse me a second. I've got some allergies working on me here. So anyway, plan the discussion. Take a few moments. Get ahead of the game before you get in there. It's going to allow you to clear your mind and think about how you're going to handle all the potential things that are going to get thrown at you all of a sudden. If you wait until you're in there, then it's too late. I have a book called Creating the Bad Guy Free Zone. It's all about how you protect yourself. And I keep telling people, everything that you're being told to protect yourself is about self-defense. It's karate, it's mace gas, it's a gun. What all that is saying is, I'm in it. I'm in it. At that point in time, I'm fighting for my life. Everything I'm learning to protect myself is presumed to be based on the fact that I'm in the fight. What about avoiding the fight? Okay, so that's protection. That means I stopped it before it happened. Law enforcement is law enforcement. It's not law protection. They're not there. They don't have enough people. It's not their fault. They just don't have enough people to protect everybody everywhere they go. They can't. But people don't seem to recognize that. They always seem to either lay it on law enforcement, they didn't do what they were supposed to do at the right time or whatever. A lot of times you have to take accountability for yourself. And the way you do that is you prep, you think through things before they're going to happen, and then you can prevent them from happening. You don't go to the bad neighborhood. You don't go to a concert that's going to be so overcrowded. You know that it's going to take oxygen out of the air. You know that there's somebody who, if there's a radical person at any kind of high level, they may decide to take it out on that crowd with a rifle. There's all kinds of things you can project. And then if you decide to go and you say, hey, I want to go there, okay, I really want to go, what do I need to do to ensure that if something happens, where do I need to be to make sure I will be protected the most? These are preventative in nature. Same thing is true about these difficult discussions, the conflicts, the performance evaluation, all these difficult discussion employees have, or the difficult discussion where you're trying to say, look, I am struggling with working at this place and I want to quit. And having that discussion with your wife, who depends on you for the money, that's something you want to plan. You don't want to go into that just saying, I'm going to quit my job. That's a shock right there. I mean, it's amazing. You can't even imagine all the emotions that creates in somebody. So you want to take the time to prep. Understand the cycle of communication is I have a message I want to send. I want to send it so you receive it and understand it the way I mean it. I have to know what I want to say to you. I have to pick the right clear words that I'm going to say, but I need to know something about you because how you receive that message will determine the meaning that you're going to attach to it. It's what I say, the meaning of the message is in the mind of the receiver. If you know something about that person and you can kind of predict how they might react to certain things you say, you can couch them in a way that they're more likely to receive it, something that is acceptable to them. You wouldn't say that to somebody like yourself, but you might say it differently to them. So these things about planning are important. So whether you're the angry person, or whether you're the defensive person who's going to be yelled at, planning and planning that organization will help you a whole lot in terms of calming the emotions down, resolving the issue quicker, and leaving an aftermath of development and growth as opposed to just tragedy. Um, okay, take some time to think about how you will deliver the message because sometimes it's important where you deliver the message. You don't want to deliver it in front of the kids if it's an argument scenario. You don't want to uh, deliver it in when somebody's, just stepping in the middle of cooking something, in the kitchen. As a boss, you don't want to have a difficult discussion sitting behind the desk because you got a barrier behind, and you need to come out, get out, and sit down next to the employee. Lessen the distance between you and them. It's a more personal discussion, even though it's a difficult discussion. It's more personal. You want to get in a little closer. You want to be able to show that employee you have some caring about this signal you're sending, even if it's a difficult one. So where you deliver this is important. How close you are to the person. These are, by the way, nonverbal communication. They're nonverbal. So you want to decide things like how close you want to be to the person. In some cases, where you want to have the discussion might be out of the house, in the house, somewhere else. Is it the right time to have discussion? If I think one of the things they talk about is the lady who's coming home on a girls' night out. She's supposed to be back by midnight. She came in at 2:30. The husband's waiting. Where the hell you been? You didn't answer any of my text messages. I want to know exactly what's going on. He's starting to light into her. He's starting to criticize her. And, if you stop, this is going to happen. You stop just before you get home, before you pull in the driveway. You pull in the driveway. You open up the door. He's standing there waiting on you. And he starts to go off. You go, look, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Trust me, I understand. I lost track of time. I made a mistake. I was having a lot of fun. I just lost track of time. I was making a mistake. I can guarantee you nothing else is wrong there, but I've had a little too much to drink. It's late at night. I'm extremely tired. This is not the time to have this discussion. Can we have it tomorrow when you get home from work? We'll block out some time. I'll go explain it all. You can tell me how you felt. I know you have to be upset. I know you were worried. I know you probably had all kinds of things. Who's she out with? What's she doing? Is she with the girls? And that's not why she's answering phone. I know you had all those. I'm sorry that I put you through that. So you can plan that discussion. You can have that discussion. You can delay the discussion, and the calmness will be much better later. And you can have a more reasonable discussion at that point in time. If there's touching involved, sometimes when you get through a discussion, when you go through criticism, you back and forth, you've been through the defensiveness, to keep from reaching the point in contempt, there may be nothing better than a hug to let somebody know you still care about them, even though you're frustrated with them. Now, that's appropriate in a partner relationship. It's may or may not be appropriate at work, depending on the work environment and the people that are around you. I know we've created that environment that says don't touch anybody at work. You get sued. But sometimes that hug is exactly what somebody needs to take them out of that realm of feeling inferior, feeling down, feeling depleted, just totally incompetent or whatever. And just letting a hug sometimes can make that difference. But it has to be a wanted hug. It has to be appropriate. If you touch somebody the wrong way in the wrong time in the wrong place, you have a lawsuit on your hands for sure. But that's a call you need to make. But I do know it's one of the things that we have taken out of communication that sends such a strong signal. I know when I hug my granddaughter and she hugs me real hard, I can just feel any negative emotions just flood out of me and everything positive just explode inside of me. It's a loving hug. It's a caring hug. All of those kinds of things. So you have to kind of decide whether touching is something that's appropriate or not, and when and how. And so it's a strong nonverbal cue. It's a dangerous nonverbal cue today. Didn't used to be, but it is today. Make sure your body posture, eye contact, and facial features agree and reinforce with what your words say. That's called congruity. What you're saying means or is enhanced or emphasized by your eyes, your behavior with your body, your pitch, your tone, your inflection, everything. If you're out there going, where the hell were you? Don't you know I really love you? Why? And I'm telling you I love you, and you still come home late. I don't understand. That's an incongruent message. Love doesn't come across that way. Okay. And 95% of the time, they're going to attach your nonverbal cues to what you mean more than they are the words that you say. And that includes the pitch. It's kind of like, you're doing a great job. Yeah, that doesn't that the pitch, the tone, it doesn't sound like great. It sounds like angry. and so you have to be careful as a partner and leader. All about you is important when you're communicating. Your nonverbal cues, your tone, your pitch, your words you use, the timing, the distance, whether you're touching, whether you're not touching. All of those things are nonverbal cues that reinforce whether or not your meaning is coming across the way you intended to mean. The way to do that is practice again. Don't do this with your spouse. Don't do it with your family. Don't do it with your boss or your friends. Go somewhere else. If you're going to do it with your friends, tell your friends, say, look, we're going to pick out a nonverbal cue here. It's going to be facial features. Let's all try to guess what that person is saying to that other person based on the facial features we're watching. It's an exercise I use in class. We have that nonverbal exercise in class just to practice that area. I do it every time I go out because I enjoy that kind of activity of communicating. And it keeps me sharper in being able to notice things and not to make a judgment call on something that I can't validate in the long run. But it's these communication tips are how you recognize when something's wrong and how you can alter and adjust and overcome and correct what is wrong. So if you stop an argument before it happens, saying this is just not the right time, I just don't feel good and it's not going to work right now. You might be saving an argument going from criticism and defensiveness of that criticism into contempt for each other, which we know is that deadly activity or behavior that can really throw you into a tailspin and divorce. So some of these things are, I'm expressing them to you. They're not going to mean anything to you if you don't go play with them, you don't practice them, or you don't get more education in them so that you understand them better. You probably learn from people who have never been educated in communication, how to communicate. That's a perpetuating scenario. If you can break that by doing something like my interpersonal communication course for leaders, or you can take, several different kinds of communication courses at a college. Just go in and audit their course. I think it's a lot less money than trying to take the course. You don't need to get a grade in a course. You just need to be able to execute what you learn in the course when you get out of it. So a lot of times you can audit something. I know I was working on my PhD. I got about 3/4 of the way through with it. I just couldn't finish it. It was traveling. It was kids at home, young kids at home, and just a whole lot bearing on top of me on top of the PhD. So I had to give up the PhD. So did I ever want to go back and finish it? I never did because, frankly, I was doing everything within the work environment I would be doing with the PhD. And to be honest with you, I asked people, how much more am I worth to you as a PhD? And we don't pay by PhDs or masters. We pay by what you can deliver. Now, if you're telling me that PhD is giving you much more advantage over, when you didn't have it, then I would tell you go back and get it. But if you can get this work done to the standard we're talking about, and you seem to be doing that, I don't need, you know, you don't need a doctorate degree with me. And I ran that through several fairly significant CEOs that I worked for, and that was a response. Do that if you think it helps you become better, but it's not that we're gonna judge your effectiveness by. It's about what you achieve with this and what you bring to the party. So uh, make sure you spend some time to learn some of this stuff somewhere, somehow. You will be so much better off, and particularly if it's a relationship scenario and you're trying to build it and grow. Now, you have to tag with this some other stuff like emotional intelligence, but uh, I've already talked about the tone and the pitch of what's going on here. So, emotional intelligence is critical too. You really need to learn and master emotional intelligence. And a lot of people really don't understand it or know what that means. I've got some sites a website that I'm going to put on in the description where Andrew Huberman talks with a specialist in emotional intelligence and a doctorate. And that podcast is almost 2 hours long, but it is just a master course and how and when to use empathy and what it's about. And it's simply a dialogue between a couple of guys, one a neuroscientist, another a psychologist. So uh, this is information that will be helpful. Empathy, compassion is a real secret to establishing connection with other people. Now you have to have if you try to be empathetic and you're not really empathetic and you try to communicate like you're empathetic, your nonverbal cues are going to give you away immediately and people are going to see you as a fraud. They're not going to see you as authentic or sincere. And so you have to learn to master. This is what I say in the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey. There's 3 areas, but 2 of those areas you have to master: effective interpersonal communication. You have to learn enough about what's going on and how to do that effectively. And then you have to use that. You have to master what is involved in emotional intelligence and emotions in general. And you have to master that in order to use the communication to apply your emotional intelligence in a way that comes across authentic. So it comes across as who you are and not trying to do something some book wrote or some video you watched. It requires more than a few days, a few hours, or an hour of some coach telling you about emotional intelligence. It requires actually probably months of doing that, probably months of working on both communication and emotional intelligence at the same time. Think of it as taking a semester of college courses and you're spending weeks and studying and you got projects and different things you got to go do. That's what I do with the interpersonal communication course. You're going to get a project. You actually go do something or watch something, and you got to come back and report it, and we discuss it and relative to the theory that we've talked about around that. And then we talk about how are you going to apply this? What's going to get in the way of you applying it back on the job? What's going to be the resistance factors? How do you overcome those? So we talk not only about the theory and what it is and understanding it, but we also talk about how we take that ourselves and convert it into us, and then are able to come back and actually apply that in a discussion. And it actually changed somebody else's behavior, your employee's behavior, contributes to the organization, etc. So you can do that when you spread if you try to cram all that into a 2-day course, they leave the course, they don't remember anything, they don't get a chance to practice anything, they don't get a chance to discuss anything because there's 50 people in the class. I restrict my seminar to 6 people. Only 6 people are in that seminar. And you're with each other for 12 weeks, and you're really beginning to bond and help each other understand what's going on. You can also learn to critique each other without getting into criticisms and provide feedback effectively, and what active listening really is, because you stop each other and you say, hey, look, you just interrupted me. Let's take a minute and discuss what that's just did to the discussion. When you have those kinds of experiences, you learn about communication. You don't hear about it. So that's where we are in that realm. Let me go back one section here. This is actually I've got the my picture over this here, but this is the article and the link, but I will put that in the description. These are where I have drawn a lot of what I talked to you about today. I've drawn it out of the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey, which is a culmination of 40 years, well, about 35, no, probably about 40 years of actual leadership and leadership development experience, where I've actually learned what was working and what wasn't working and why. And I've put it into what I call a leadership odyssey, a Renaissance leadership odyssey. It is a paradigm shift. It's a way for leaders to learn how to adapt to the new working environment we're going to be dealing with over the next couple of decades. Part of that, there are 3 things: developing your psychological profile. Mastering these 3 things would be mastering your psychological profile, mastering the effective use of interpersonal communication to be able to effectively master and implement emotional intelligence into your personality as a leader, and to connect with your people in a way that inspires them to trust you and believe in you and want to follow you. That is the mark of a Renaissance leader, is when somebody wants to follow you, wants to be with you, wants to be there, and they're prepared, they're prepared to give up other things like money and other perks and things to be there and learn and grow from you. There are some companies out there like that. I mentioned Richard Branson's Virgin. Richard has a unique Renaissance leadership style that I think pretty much reflects what I say in this book. If I had a company I was going to point to and say, hey, you might find some of this being done there, it would be Virgin. The interpersonal communication workbook I put in there because I wanted you to be able to have access. There's some people, that's a $750 course. Some people can't afford it. Some people don't want to spend that much money. They want to go try and do it. You won't get what you get out of the course over 12 weeks, but you can get a lot of the knowledge that's imparted in that course in the interpersonal communication workbook. So I put these books and some other books I have available on a website called Buy Me a Coffee. I don't, there's some are, they're actually, neither one of these books are anywhere else other than this site. And no other book am I going to publish, am I going to put anywhere other than this site, because I can price them at a range that's reasonable, and I get enough money back out of them, out of that lower price, that I can take that and use it to do more research, do more work, or keep my podcast going. So if you take your phone, you put it up against there and put it on photo, you get a website. You click on that website, it'll take you there. You go to the shop, click on the shop, and the books will be for sale there, right there on the shop. And you can purchase them, grab the link. You get the link to the book. Yes, you can go out and give it to whoever you want. Just don't put it on social media, and don't do any workshops around these because they are copyrighted. And if I see it, then I'm kind of forced into protecting my material. I don't care about copyright other than that. Copyright, in my mind, is a barrier to stuff getting out. So if you had, I mean, I trust the average person is honest enough that if they want to give this to a friend, if they think it'll help a friend, if it'll help a boss, if it'll help a family member, you're free to give them that link and let them go use it. Because once you use it, I don't think it's locked down to a one purchase scenario. I couldn't be honest. To be honest with you, I don't know. But if you take that link and you decide to share it with somebody else, I don't have a problem with that. If it's going to be somebody that helps you and it gets more information out to people to become more effective leaders. I have a problem if you try to do a workshop off my workbook, because you probably won't be good at it. It'll come off wrong, and consequently it can reflect on me. And or if you try to do the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey program, I'd like to at least go over that with you and talk about helping you guide that first thing. That change process is a significant change process. If you're not an expert at that area, even if you are, you may struggle in getting certain things that I've discussed and put through across to a CEO or a group of people or a department head or whatever. So if you want to use it, that's fine. That's what I want. I want people to grab it, go out and create change with it. But I want to also spend some time with folks before they leap into that bucket. So both of those are ebooks, and every book I am going to do from now on will be ebook, simply because I can put it here. Secondly, I can put a lot of links. I can even put videos inside from podcasts I do, portions of videos, podcast videos. I can put audio podcasts. I can put a lot of information inside an ebook, and it goes into the digital library. It's available. There's a membership that goes with that. Buy Me a Coffee. You get that membership, you're going to get the books at a discounted rate, but they're also going to be there for a long time in case you lose the link or something like that. You can get back in there and just pick up and find out where you're doing stuff. I would like for you to again sign up for my Building Renaissance Leaders YouTube channel. Subscribe to it, like it, and hit that notification bell, because you won't know that I've done this live thing on the fly real quick, but you might know if you got that notification bell working for you, and it sends you an email saying, hey, Vic's going live in 25 minutes. So do all of that stuff. If you want to help promote stuff like this that I'm going to do in the future, because I'm retired, I'm doing this on my own money. If you want to help, on that Buy Me a Coffee, on the front page, when you first get to it, there's a place where you can put $5 in, $10, $25. You can put as much as you want. You can buy me 25 coffees, 1,000 coffees, however you want to do that. Whatever you feel is a sense of value. But when you sign up, you subscribe to this, or whether you let me know on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever else I am that you find me. If you read the book and it's helpful, the books are helpful to you, or if the podcasts are helpful to you, please leave a review telling me, or leave me a comment telling me what you liked about it, how it's helping you, what you liked about it, what you'd like to see me do to help the future shows. Uh, if you would like to dialogue with someone else, if you'd like a community, I'm trying to create a community on Facebook now, and God knows if I'll get that done. Uh, Again, I'm not a techie here, I'm a leadership expert, and I'm doing all this myself because I can't afford marketing or producers or anything. Um, if I get uh, comments and stuff that tell me what you're looking for, we can start building those reference libraries and things that will be helpful. So if you run into that situation, you need a quick idea about how you plan your interpersonal communication discussion before you walk in at 3 o'clock in the morning. You were supposed to be home at midnight. So just, just some helpful things that you might be helpful if you can read your phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. It might be helpful just to go there and refresh your memory of what I told you. Hope this has been helpful for you. I know it's a little long, but most of my podcasts are. If it is, pass it on, tell other people about it. The more people I get liking the podcast and subscribing to it, obviously, the more these people send the podcast out to other people. I guess that's how things work. Personally, I don't care. I don't know about likes. I guess likes would push the channel a little bit. I care more about your comments because I can read those. I can get something out of those. I have no idea what you mean if you say you like it. I'm not a big like persons, and I don't need. It'd be nice to hit a lot of subscribers. I don't know that everybody has to like everything I do because I don't know what I would do with 10,000 likes. I have no idea what somebody Taylor Swift does with, you know, 300 million likes or 180 million likes, whatever she has. I have no idea what she would do with all those likes. Maybe she can sway a vote. That might be something if you get up to that range. 10,000 likes, you're not going to be swaying anybody's votes. So likes are not a big thing with me on any of the channels that I'm on: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Oh, I've already said that. YouTube. All those are the primary places I hang around. Um, Please leave the comments. I appreciate it. So until next time, have a good evening. I hope this stuff's helpful for you. Go out and build your relationship up. Don't get to the point where somebody's criticizing you or starts having contempt for you. Just stop that before it happens with good interpersonal communication. See you later.